Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Science Vault. Somewhere, right now, someone is lying awake in the dark, turning over a question they cannot yet answer. Maybe it is about tomorrow. Maybe it is about a decision still unmade, a diagnosis still unclear, or a relationship whose next chapter has not yet been written. And in that quiet moment, a strange tightness rises in the chest, not because anything has gone wrong, but simply because nothing has been decided yet. This is the feeling we are going to sit with tonight. Not to solve it, not to fix it, but to understand it, slowly, gently, the way a river understands the shape of the land it moves through, without hurry, without judgment. Tonight we are exploring the psychology of fear, specifically, the fear of the unknown. Why the human mind recoils from ambiguity. Why uncertainty can feel, in the body, almost like danger, even when no danger is present at all. Over the next several hours, across 100 gentle observations, we will walk through the architecture of this very old, very human experience. We will move slowly. We will let each idea settle before moving to the next. And if at some point your eyes grow heavy and your thoughts begin to drift, that is all right. This is a space where you are allowed to simply listen, and let understanding arrive quietly, without effort. Let us begin. The first thing worth knowing is that fear of the unknown is not a flaw in your character. It is not evidence of weakness, or fragility, or something broken in your wiring. It is, instead, one of the most ordinary responses a human being can have. Ordinary in the truest sense, shared, widespread, built into the species long before any one of us was born. Consider how strange it would be if this were not true. If a creature walked into a dark cave, or an unfamiliar forest, or an unmapped stretch of ocean, and felt nothing at all, no caution, no hesitation, no flicker of unease, we might call that creature fearless. But we might also call it careless. Because the truth is, ambiguity has always carried some risk. Not always danger, but the possibility of danger. And a mind that responds to that possibility with a small measure of concern is not malfunctioning. It is doing exactly what minds have done for hundreds of thousands of years. So when you feel that quiet unease before an uncertain outcome, before opening an email you have not read, before stepping into a room full of strangers, before waiting on results that have not yet arrived, you are not experiencing some rare personal defect. You are experiencing something closer to a shared inheritance. A response so old, and so common, that it may be one of the few emotional experiences nearly every human being who has ever lived has, in some form, quietly known. This does not mean the feeling is always pleasant. It rarely is. But there is a kind of relief, isn't there, in knowing that discomfort with ambiguity is not a personal failing to be ashamed of, but a normal thread woven into what it means to be human at all. And yet, if it is universal, it is not identical from person to person. This brings us to our second observation, that although fear of the unknown touches nearly everyone, it is not carved from a single block. It is shaped, instead, by at least two forces working together, biology and lived experience. Biology gives us the raw material. It hands down old circuitry, ancient alarm systems, reflexes inherited from ancestors who survived, in part because they were cautious around what they could not yet explain. This is the baseline, the starting hardware, so to speak, present in every human nervous system in some form. But experience is the sculptor. It takes that raw biological material and shapes it into something unique to each life. A person who grew up in a home where surprises were usually pleasant may carry a different relationship with uncertainty than someone who grew up bracing for sudden change. A person who has weathered an unexpected loss may respond to ambiguity differently than someone who has mostly been met with predictable kindness. This is worth sitting with for a moment, because it means the fear you carry, if you carry it, is not simply in your genes, full stop, as though it were fixed and unchangeable. Nor is it purely a product of what happened to you, as though biology played no role at all. It is both, woven together. Biology laying the foundation, experience building the particular rooms and hallways of how uncertainty feels to you, specifically, in your one particular life. And understanding this, that the fear is neither purely inherited nor purely learned, but some blend of both, can be quietly freeing. It means the story is not finished. Even old patterns, shaped over years, retain some capacity to shift, gently, over time. Let us move now toward the third thread in this exploration, why the unknown feels uncomfortable in the first place. And to understand this, we return to something fundamental about how the human mind seems to prefer to operate. Human beings, broadly speaking, are wired to prefer clarity. Not because clarity is morally superior to ambiguity, but because clarity supports something the mind deeply values, the ability to act. Think about what it takes to do almost anything. To cross a street, you need some clarity about the traffic. To have a conversation, you need some clarity, even minimal, about the mood of the person across from you. To make a decision, any decision, from what to eat to where to live, some degree of clarity about the options in front of you becomes necessary. Clarity is not simply comfortable, it is functional. It is the ground a person stands on before taking the next step. Ambiguity, by contrast, offers no ground to stand on. It is the fog before the path becomes visible. And while fog is not inherently dangerous, though it might be, the not knowing what lies within it is enough to make the body pause, hesitate, tighten slightly, waiting for more information before committing to a direction. This preference for clarity is not vanity or impatience. It is deeply practical. A mind that can see clearly can act decisively. A mind facing fog must, by necessity, slow down, gather information, wait. And waiting, for a mind built partly around the instinct to respond and adapt, can feel like its own quiet kind of discomfort. This leads naturally into our fourth reflection, the human drive not just to understand the world, but to predict it, and where possible, to exert some influence over it. This drive toward prediction and control runs remarkably deep. It shows up in small ways, like checking the weather before leaving the house, and in enormous ways, like entire civilizations building calendars, almanacs, and elaborate systems of forecasting, agricultural, financial, meteorological, all in an effort to know, even slightly, what tomorrow might bring. Why does this drive exist so persistently? Because prediction, even imperfect prediction, offers something enormously valuable: the ability to prepare. A person who expects rain brings an umbrella. A person who expects difficulty at work arrives with a plan. A person who senses a hard conversation coming can, in some small way, brace for it, gather their thoughts, choose their words with more care. Uncertainty removes this preparation entirely. It says, in effect, you do not get to know what is coming, and so you cannot ready yourself for it. And for a mind built around the comfort of readiness, this absence of warning can feel disproportionately uncomfortable, even when the unknown outcome itself is entirely neutral, or even mildly positive. This is worth remembering the next time uncertainty creeps in uninvited. The discomfort is rarely about the unknown thing itself. It is, more often, about the loss of the ability to prepare for it. Now we come to something a little more intricate: the way the brain itself seems to function, moment to moment, almost entirely around the act of prediction. Modern understanding of the brain increasingly points toward this idea, that the brain is not a passive receiver of information, waiting quietly for the world to reveal itself. It is, instead, an active predictor, constantly, quietly, forming expectations about what will happen next, updating those expectations against incoming information, and adjusting almost instantly when something doesn't match what was expected. Consider something as ordinary as walking down a familiar hallway. The brain is not simply reacting to each step as it happens. It is anticipating. It expects the floor to be solid. It expects the light switch to be exactly where it always is. It expects the door at the end of the hallway to open the way it always opens. This constant anticipation happens so smoothly, so invisibly, that a person rarely notices it is happening at all, until, of course, something breaks the pattern. The floor unexpectedly creaks differently. The light switch has moved. The door sticks. And in that small break from prediction, there is a flicker of disruption, small, but noticeable. Now imagine this same mechanism, operating not in a hallway, but in the vast open landscape of an unknown future. When there is not enough information to build an accurate prediction, when the brain reaches for a model of what comes next and simply cannot find one, discomfort tends to rise. Not because anything dangerous has occurred, but because the predictive machinery, so central to how the brain seems to operate, has nothing solid to hold on to. This is not a poetic metaphor. It reflects something increasingly understood about how brains function: prediction as a near-constant background process, and uncertainty as, in some sense, a disruption of that process. And this brings us gently into our sixth observation, which deepens this same idea, that fear of the unknown is closely tied to how the brain attempts to foresee the future, and that this forecasting system tends to falter, specifically, when information is missing. It helps to imagine the brain as something like a storyteller, quietly narrating events even before they happen. This internal narrator gathers small clues, a tone of voice, a pattern from the past, a subtle shift in circumstance, and weaves them into a coherent expectation of what is likely to occur next. When there is enough material to work with, this storyteller works quickly and confidently. It builds a scene almost effortlessly, and the resulting sense of "I know roughly what is coming" allows the mind to relax, at least partially, into that expectation. But when the material runs out, when there are no clear signals, no familiar patterns, nothing solid to build upon, the storyteller stalls. It cannot complete the scene. And this incomplete narrative, this story without an ending, without even a clear next sentence, tends to generate a kind of internal restlessness. Not because the missing ending is necessarily bad, but simply because it is missing. This is, in a sense, one of the more elegant explanations for why an unfinished situation can feel harder to sit with than a difficult but clearly understood one. The mind, so accustomed to finishing its own stories, finds itself suspended mid-sentence, and suspension, even brief suspension, tends to feel uncomfortable to a system built around continuity and closure. Let us pause here for a moment, and let that idea settle. The discomfort of uncertainty, so often, is really the discomfort of an unfinished story. From here we move naturally into our seventh reflection, which builds directly on this idea of narrative incoherence. Human minds appear to have a persistent, almost automatic habit of building coherent stories out of the events unfolding around them. Not necessarily dramatic stories, but simple, functional ones. This happened, therefore that is likely to happen, therefore I should respond in this particular way. This habit of coherence building operates so continuously that it often goes entirely unnoticed, quietly stitching together cause and effect, moment to moment, throughout an ordinary day. Uncertainty interrupts this habit directly. It presents a set of events, or a set of possibilities, that refuse to resolve into a clean, coherent story. There is no clear cause, no clear effect, no obvious and then. Just openness. Multiple possible directions, none of them confirmed. For a mind so oriented toward coherence, this open-endedness can feel almost like static, a signal without a clear shape, resisting the mind's natural tendency to organize, interpret, and make sense. And this resistance, this refusal of experience to settle into a tidy narrative, is part of what makes the unknown feel so uniquely uncomfortable, not dangerous, necessarily, but unresolved. Ongoing. Waiting. This leads to a particularly important distinction, and our eighth reflection tonight, that a significant part of this fear is not actually about the unknown thing itself, but about the internal effort of trying to make sense of it before any action becomes possible. Picture, for a moment, standing at the edge of an unfamiliar situation, a new job on its first morning, a medical test still pending results, a conversation whose outcome cannot yet be guessed. In each of these moments, there is very often a kind of internal labor happening quietly beneath the surface, turning the situation over, examining it from different angles, searching for clues, testing possible outcomes, all in an effort to understand enough to know how to respond. This effort, this quiet churning of the mind trying to make sense of incomplete information, can itself become exhausting, even before any real action has been taken. The unknown outcome has not yet arrived. Nothing has actually happened yet. And still, the mind is working, laboring, straining toward clarity that has not yet come. This is an important distinction to hold gently, because it suggests that much of the discomfort associated with uncertainty is not a response to the unknown event itself, which has not yet occurred and may never occur in the feared form at all. It is, instead, a response to the effort of trying to resolve it prematurely, the mental strain of reaching for an answer that simply is not available yet. Understanding this can offer a small, quiet kind of relief. Because if the discomfort comes largely from this effortful reaching, then perhaps, in some situations, gently loosening that grip, allowing an answer to arrive in its own time, rather than straining to force it early, may ease at least part of the discomfort, even before the actual outcome is known. This brings us toward our ninth reflection, which softens the picture even further, that the fear of the unknown is not always, or even usually, about danger at all. It is tempting to imagine that uncertainty feels uncomfortable because some part of the mind believes something bad is lurking within it. And sometimes, certainly, that is true. But very often, the discomfort is something quieter and less dramatic than fear of danger. It is simply the absence of enough information to feel settled. Consider waiting for a friend who is running late, with no message explaining why. There is rarely a genuine, reasoned belief that something terrible has happened. And yet a subtle unease can creep in anyway, not because danger seems likely, but because the lack of information leaves a small gap where the mind, quietly and almost reflexively, searches for something to fill it. This distinction matters because it suggests that a great deal of the discomfort surrounding uncertainty is not really fear in the dramatic sense, not the fear of tigers in tall grass, or genuine looming threat, but something gentler and more common. An unsettled feeling. A mild restlessness. The simple sensation of not yet having enough pieces to complete the picture. And this understanding invites a kind of compassion toward oneself in these moments, recognizing that discomfort with not knowing is not necessarily a sign that something is wrong. It may simply be the natural texture of incompleteness, uncomfortable, yes, but not, in itself, a signal of true danger. This brings us, gently, to our 10th and final reflection for this segment, a curious and very well observed pattern in human behavior. That people, again and again, across many different contexts, tend to prefer a known bad outcome over an unknown one. At first, this might seem almost paradoxical. Why would anyone prefer certainty about something unpleasant over the mere possibility, even the strong possibility, of something better? And yet this pattern shows up repeatedly, in decisions large and small. People sometimes remain in difficult but familiar circumstances rather than step into unfamiliar circumstances that might, in truth, be far better. People sometimes prefer to know a hard truth immediately, rather than wait in uncertainty for news that might turn out to be good. The explanation returns us to nearly everything we have walked through tonight. Predictability, even unpleasant predictability, offers something ambiguity cannot: the ability to prepare, to adjust, to know where one stands. A known difficulty can be planned around. An unknown outcome, no matter how promising it might turn out to be, offers no such foundation to stand upon in the meantime. This is not irrational, even though it might look that way from a distance. It reflects, instead, everything we have gently uncovered tonight: a mind built to value clarity over ambiguity, prediction over uncertainty, a completed story over an unfinished one. Given a choice between a known, if uncomfortable, ending, and an unknown ending that might be better or might be worse, something deep within the human mind, again and again, reaches instinctively toward the version it can actually see. And so we arrive at the end of our first set of reflections, 10 small windows into why the unknown feels the way it feels. We have seen that this fear is common, not weak, shaped by both nature and experience, rooted in the mind's deep preference for clarity, prediction, and coherent stories, and often less about danger, and more about the simple absence of enough information to feel settled. There is more to uncover. Much more. In the segments ahead, we will continue walking gently through this landscape, exploring how this fear shows up in the body, how it echoes through relationships, decisions, and the quiet corners of everyday life, and how, over time, a person might learn to hold uncertainty a little more gently. For now, let this first set of ideas settle, the way a stone settles slowly to the bottom of still water. No need to hold on to every detail, no need to organize it all perfectly in your mind. Simply let it rest there, quietly, as we continue on. As that stone settles into stillness, let's continue exploring, moving a little deeper into the mechanics of this very old feeling. There is a quiet economy at work inside the human mind, one that most people never consciously notice, but that shapes an enormous amount of daily experience. The brain, it turns out, tends to prefer predictable information, not out of any particular fondness for routine, but because predictability reduces the amount of mental effort required to function. Think of the difference between walking through a house you have lived in for years, in the dark, versus walking through a stranger's house, in the dark, for the very first time. In your own home, the mind barely has to work. It already knows where the furniture sits, where the floor creaks, where the doorway narrows slightly on the left. This knowledge is not something you consciously recall, it simply operates in the background, freeing your attention for other things. But in an unfamiliar house, every step demands effort. Every surface must be tested. Every sound must be interpreted freshly, without the benefit of prior experience to lean on. This is, in miniature, what happens whenever a person faces genuine uncertainty. The mind cannot rely on stored patterns. It must work harder, moment to moment, simply to make sense of what is happening. And this added effort, this quiet mental strain of processing something without the shortcuts that familiarity usually provides, is part of what makes uncertain situations feel more taxing than certain ones, even when the actual content of the situation is not especially difficult. Predictability, in other words, is not just comfortable. It is efficient. It allows the mind to conserve its energy for the things that truly need it. And when that efficiency is taken away, when a person is dropped into ambiguity, the resulting effort, often invisible, often unnamed, can quietly contribute to the discomfort so many people associate with the unknown. This naturally leads into a related question, one worth sitting with for a while. Why, exactly, does ambiguity create such a distinct sense of hesitation? Part of the answer lies in something almost logistical. Ambiguity makes it genuinely difficult to decide on a course of action. In nearly any situation, a mind facing something unfamiliar is quietly running through a short list of possible responses. Should I move toward this, approach it, engage with it, learn more? Should I move away from it, avoid it, protect myself from it, keep my distance? Or should I simply wait, gathering more information before committing to either path. This three-part decision, approach, avoid, or wait, sits at the heart of an enormous amount of human behavior, often operating far beneath conscious awareness. And under clear conditions, this decision tends to resolve quickly. If a situation is obviously safe, the mind leans toward approach. If a situation is obviously dangerous, the mind leans toward avoidance. The path forward feels relatively clear. But ambiguity disrupts this process entirely. When there is not enough information to know whether a situation is safe or unsafe, beneficial or harmful, the mind cannot confidently choose a direction. It hovers, instead, in an uncomfortable middle state, unable to fully commit to approach, unable to fully commit to avoidance, and often left with only the third option, waiting, which, while sometimes wise, tends to feel restless rather than settled. This hovering, this suspended indecision, is itself a source of quiet distress. Not because either outcome, approach or avoidance, would necessarily be difficult, but because the not knowing which one to choose creates its own particular kind of discomfort, distinct from the discomfort of any specific outcome. This brings us to something closely related: the way uncertainty interferes with the brain's ability to prepare an actual response. Preparation, in a physiological sense, is not simply a mental exercise. It involves real, tangible processes, shifts in attention, subtle changes in muscle tension, adjustments in breathing and heart rate, all oriented toward readiness for whatever comes next. When a person can reasonably predict what is coming, even if what is coming is difficult, the body can begin this preparation early. It can brace, adjust, organize itself around the expected demand. Uncertainty removes this option. Without a clear sense of what to prepare for, the body cannot organize itself around any single anticipated response. And so, instead of preparing for one particular thing, it often falls into a kind of generalized readiness, a background hum of alertness, without a specific target. This generalized readiness, sustained over time, tends to be experienced as anxiety, not fear of any one specific thing, but a diffuse, unfocused tension, arising simply because the body does not yet know what, exactly, it is preparing for. This helps explain something many people have quietly noticed in their own lives: that the anticipation of an uncertain event can sometimes feel more draining than the event itself, once it finally arrives. Once a situation becomes clear, even if it becomes clearly difficult, the body can finally direct its readiness towards something specific. But in the waiting period beforehand, that readiness has nowhere to go, and so it simply persists, quietly, uncomfortably, without resolution. Which brings us to a particularly interesting observation about human experience: that not knowing what will happen can feel, subjectively, more threatening than the situation itself, once it is finally known. This might initially seem counterintuitive. Surely a difficult, confirmed outcome should feel worse than simple uncertainty. And yet, again and again, people report the opposite, that the waiting period before a diagnosis feels harder than receiving the diagnosis itself. That the uncertainty before a decision feels harder than living with the decision, once made. That not knowing whether a relationship will continue or end feels, in some strange way, more exhausting than facing either outcome directly. Why might this be? Part of the answer lies in something we've already touched on. Uncertainty keeps the mind in a state of unresolved effort, constantly searching, constantly trying to predict, constantly unable to settle. A known outcome, even an unwanted one, at least allows this searching to stop. It provides an ending, and endings, even difficult ones, offer a kind of relief that open-ended uncertainty simply cannot provide. There is also something about the imagination itself worth considering here. In the absence of confirmed information, the mind does not simply remain empty and neutral. It tends, instead, to fill that empty space with possibilities, and very often, these imagined possibilities skew toward the difficult, the threatening, the worst case. A single unknown outcome can quietly generate dozens of imagined variations, many of them worse than what eventually occurs. And so, in a strange way, uncertainty does not simply withhold information, it can actively manufacture additional distress, born entirely from imagination rather than reality. This leads into a wider observation, and this next idea, in particular, feels quite central to tonight's exploration. Fear of the unknown can rise even when the unknown thing is not, in any objective sense, dangerous at all. This happens because the brain appears to treat the mere absence of information as a kind of warning sign in itself. This is a subtle but important distinction. It suggests that the discomfort is not always a response to a perceived threat within the unknown situation. Sometimes, it is simply a response to the unknownness itself, the blankness, the missing data, treated by the mind almost as though the absence of information were, on its own, a small red flag. Consider a simple, everyday example. A message arrives that says only, "We need to talk," with no further explanation. In this moment, nothing threatening has actually been stated. And yet a small alarm often rises anyway, prompted not by any actual bad news, but purely by the vagueness itself. The mind, faced with insufficient information, seems to default toward caution, treating the gap in knowledge as though it might be hiding something worth worrying about, even when there is no specific evidence that anything is wrong at all. This tendency, treating unfamiliarity itself as a potential warning sign, deserves a closer look, because it connects directly to something deeply rooted in how humans have always related to their environment. Across a long stretch of human history, unfamiliar things were, quite often, genuinely worth being cautious around. An unfamiliar plant might be edible, or it might be poisonous. An unfamiliar sound in the darkness might be harmless, or it might signal danger. An unfamiliar person approaching from a distance might be a fellow traveler, or might not be. In an environment where the unfamiliar carried real, sometimes serious risk, a mind that treated unfamiliarity itself with a small measure of built-in caution would have had a genuine advantage. Over time, this cautious orientation toward the unfamiliar appears to have become deeply embedded, less as a conscious decision, and more as something closer to a reflex. Even now, in a world where the vast majority of unfamiliar situations carry no danger at all, this old reflex often continues quietly operating in the background, treating novelty and ambiguity with a small flicker of wariness, simply because that response once served a very real, very practical purpose. This naturally connects with something worth examining more closely, The way the brain often reacts to uncertainty with anxiety before any actual danger has had the chance to appear. This sequencing matters. The anxious response, in many cases, does not wait for confirmation that something is truly wrong. It arrives early, almost preemptively, triggered simply by the presence of ambiguity itself. In a sense, the mind appears to operate on a kind of precautionary principle: better to feel a small amount of unnecessary unease in 100 harmless situations, than to feel no unease at all in the rare situation where real danger happens to be present. This precautionary tendency, while sometimes frustrating in daily modern life, where genuine danger is often rare, becomes far more understandable when placed within a longer evolutionary context. And this brings us toward one of the deeper threads running through everything discussed so far tonight: the idea that fear of the unknown is not simply a random quirk of the mind, but something that likely served a genuine evolutionary purpose. For much of human history, the environments our ancestors navigated were considerably less predictable, and often considerably more dangerous, than the environments most people move through today. Unfamiliar territory might contain unknown predators. Unfamiliar terrain might hide unstable footing, hidden hazards, or unseen threats. In such a world, a heightened alertness toward the unfamiliar was not an inconvenience; it was, quite plausibly, a survival advantage. Ancestors who approached unfamiliar situations with a degree of built-in caution, who paused before entering unknown territory, who hesitated before approaching unfamiliar animals, who remained alert in unfamiliar surroundings rather than moving through them carelessly, were, on average, more likely to avoid the dangers those environments sometimes contained. And ancestors who survived long enough to pass on their traits, quite naturally, tended to pass along this same cautious orientation toward the unfamiliar. This connects directly to something a little more specific, a survival logic that seems to run quietly beneath the surface of this whole discussion. Cautious responses to unfamiliar situations, even when the vast majority of those situations turned out to be perfectly safe, were more likely, on balance, to help ancestors avoid the rare situations that were genuinely dangerous. The cost of unnecessary caution was usually small: a bit of hesitation, a bit of wasted alertness. But the cost of insufficient caution, in a genuinely dangerous situation, could be severe, even fatal. Given this imbalance, a mind that erred consistently on the side of caution around the unfamiliar would have had, across many generations, a meaningful survival edge. And so we arrive, gently, at a kind of reframing worth holding onto as this segment draws to a close. This fear, uncomfortable as it so often feels in the present moment, did not originate as some flaw to be eliminated. It originated as something protective. A quiet, built-in caution, designed to help a vulnerable creature move a little more carefully through a world it could not fully predict or control. That does not mean this ancient caution always serves us well today. Much of what once represented genuine danger, unfamiliar terrain, unknown animals, unmapped surroundings, has been replaced, in modern life, by far gentler forms of uncertainty: an unanswered message, an uncertain outcome at work, an unclear next step in a relationship or a plan. And yet the same old caution, built for a very different world, often continues to respond with the same intensity, even when the modern unknown carries little or no real danger at all. Understanding this, that the discomfort so many people feel toward uncertainty is, at its root, an old survival mechanism, doing its very old job in a very new world, can offer a quiet kind of perspective. The feeling is not a malfunction. It is an inheritance. Sometimes useful, sometimes outdated, but always, in its origin, protective. As we move forward into the next set of reflections, we will begin exploring how this ancient caution shows up in the body itself, the subtle physical signatures of uncertainty, the way it moves through breath and posture and attention, and how, over time, a person might begin to relate to this old, protective instinct with a little more understanding and a little more ease. For now, let this settle quietly, the way it has settled for every human mind that has ever paused, uncertain, at the edge of something unfamiliar, and let's continue on, gently, from here. There is something worth noticing here, a subtle bias that runs through nearly everything we've explored so far tonight. The mind does not treat all possibilities equally. Given a range of outcomes, some good, some neutral, some bad, human attention tends to gravitate, almost magnetically, toward the ones that carry potential threat. This is not a conscious choice. It happens quietly, automatically, beneath the surface of deliberate thought. Imagine a simple uncertain situation. A friend has not replied to a message in several hours. Consider the range of neutral, even mundane explanations available. Perhaps the phone is on silent. Perhaps they are busy, or driving, or simply distracted by the ordinary business of their day. These explanations are entirely plausible, arguably more statistically likely than anything alarming. And yet, so often, it is not these neutral possibilities that rise first to the surface of the mind. It is the less likely, more troubling ones. This tendency to weigh potential threats more heavily than neutral or positive possibilities appears to be a deeply embedded feature of how the mind processes ambiguity. And it helps explain something important about why uncertainty so often feels disproportionately intense. It is not simply that an unclear situation contains equal parts danger and safety, leaving a person suspended evenly between the two. It is that the mind, faced with that same blank space, tends to lean the scale toward caution, toward concern, toward the darker end of the range of possibilities, even when the evidence does not clearly support doing so. This connects closely with a related pattern worth sitting with. The exact same situation, containing the exact same objective facts, can feel measurably more threatening simply because it remains unclear, compared to how it would feel once clarified. This is a curious thing to consider. The danger, if any exists at all, has not changed. Only the amount of available information has changed. And yet the felt experience of threat can shift dramatically, simply based on how much is known or unknown at any given moment. Consider two versions of a similar scenario. In the first, a person receives a clear, detailed message about a minor setback at work, fully explained, fully understood, with a clear next step already outlined. In the second, a person receives only a vague, unclear message, hinting at some kind of problem, without any further explanation. Even if the underlying issue in both scenarios turns out to be identical in severity, the second version, the ambiguous one, tends to generate a stronger, more prolonged sense of unease. Clarity, even about something imperfect, seems to soften the emotional impact. Ambiguity, even about something ultimately minor, seems to amplify it. This happens, in large part, because of something we touched on earlier, now worth exploring a little further. When information is incomplete, the mind does not simply leave that gap empty. It tends to fill it, instinctively, with caution. In the absence of clear facts, imagination steps forward to complete the picture, and that imagined completion, more often than not, leans toward worry rather than reassurance. This gap-filling process happens so quickly, so automatically, that it can be difficult to notice it happening at all. A person facing an ambiguous situation rarely thinks, consciously, "I am now going to imagine several troubling scenarios to fill this informational void." And yet, functionally, this is very often exactly what unfolds. The mind, uncomfortable with emptiness, reaches for something to hold on to, and caution, shaped by that old evolutionary inheritance we explored earlier, tends to be the material closest at hand. This entire process, this treatment of uncertainty as a kind of warning signal in itself, connects directly to something happening at a very concrete, physiological level within the brain. When ambiguity arises, the brain does not remain neutral or passive. It begins, almost immediately, an active search. It starts scanning, quietly and rapidly, for any possible indication of danger hidden within the unclear situation. This search process happens largely outside of conscious awareness. A person does not typically feel themselves deliberately searching for danger. They simply notice, afterward, that a sense of unease has already arisen, seemingly on its own. At the center of this rapid, largely unconscious search sits a small, almond-shaped structure deep within the brain called the amygdala. Though tiny, the amygdala plays an outsized role in this entire process. It functions something like a rapid alarm system, built for speed rather than nuance, capable of reacting to unfamiliar or ambiguous situations before the more deliberate, more rational parts of the brain have had time to fully evaluate what is actually happening. This speed is, in many ways, the entire point of the amygdala's design. In moments of genuine danger, waiting for slow, careful, rational analysis could be costly, even fatal. And so the amygdala appears built to prioritize quick response over careful accuracy, reacting first, and allowing more thoughtful evaluation to catch up afterward, rather than waiting for that evaluation to finish before responding at all. This helps explain something many people have quietly noticed about their own emotional experience, that reactions to unfamiliar or uncertain situations can feel remarkably immediate, and remarkably emotional, often arriving before any clear, reasoned explanation for the feeling has fully formed. A person might feel a wave of unease upon walking into an unfamiliar room, or hearing an ambiguous tone in someone's voice, well before their more rational mind has had the chance to articulate exactly why. This is the amygdala at work, responding quickly, emotionally, and somewhat bluntly, well ahead of the slower, more careful reasoning that typically follows. Understanding this sequence, feeling first, understanding second, can be quietly clarifying. It suggests that the emotional wave which so often accompanies uncertainty is not something a person has consciously chosen, or reason their way into. It arrives first, almost involuntarily, produced by ancient, fast-acting circuitry, long before slower, more thoughtful evaluation has the chance to weigh in. This rapid emotional response does not remain confined to the mind alone. It ripples outward, into the body itself, often quite noticeably. When people encounter the unknown, particularly when that unknown carries even a hint of ambiguity or unpredictability, the body can shift into what is often called a fight or flight state, even in the complete absence of any real, immediate physical danger. This is worth pausing on, because it highlights something slightly paradoxical about this whole system. The body's emergency response mechanism, originally built for situations involving genuine physical threat, a predator, an attacker, an immediate hazard, can be activated by something as abstract and non-physical as simple uncertainty. A pending decision, an unclear diagnosis, an ambiguous message. None of these involve any physical danger whatsoever, and yet the body, in many cases, responds as though they might. This activation involves real, measurable changes within the body, driven largely by the release of stress hormones. Uncertainty, even purely mental or emotional uncertainty, can trigger the release of hormones such as cortisol, often described as one of the body's primary stress hormones. Alongside cortisol, adrenaline, sometimes also called epinephrine, may surge as well, particularly in moments where uncertainty feels sudden or especially intense. These hormones are not incidental. They serve a very specific physiological purpose, preparing the body for potential action, whether that action ultimately involves confronting a challenge directly, or retreating from it entirely. Adrenaline tends to increase heart rate, sharpen alertness, and direct blood flow toward the muscles, priming the body for rapid physical movement, should movement become necessary. Cortisol, operating on a somewhat longer timescale, helps sustain this heightened state of readiness, supporting continued alertness even as an uncertain situation lingers, unresolved, over an extended period. This entire hormonal cascade, though invisible to the eye, often produces very visible, very physical symptoms. A racing heart, heightened alertness, sometimes bordering on hypervigilance, a subtle tightness in the chest, or a restless, unsettled quality throughout the body, difficult to fully explain, yet unmistakably present. These physical sensations are not separate from the psychological experience of uncertainty. They are, in many ways, the psychological experience of uncertainty, made physically tangible, expressed through the body's own ancient, deeply embedded response system. It is worth pausing here, gently, to notice something important. These physical symptoms, uncomfortable as they can feel in the moment, are not signs of malfunction. They represent an old, deeply practical survival system, doing exactly what it was designed to do, preparing the body for potential action in the face of something unclear or unfamiliar. The system does not pause to carefully distinguish between a genuine physical threat and a purely mental or emotional uncertainty. It simply responds, broadly and instinctively, treating the unknown itself as reason enough for readiness. This helps explain why uncertainty, even when it involves nothing physically dangerous whatsoever, so often produces such tangible physical sensations. The racing heart before an uncertain outcome. the tightness in the shoulders while waiting on an unclear answer, the restless energy that makes stillness feel almost impossible during a period of not knowing. None of these sensations require any actual danger to be present. They require only uncertainty itself, interpreted, quietly and automatically, by ancient systems within the brain and body, as reason enough to prepare. As we continue forward into the material still ahead, we will begin exploring how this heightened bodily state, so often triggered by nothing more than simple ambiguity, can be gently understood and gradually eased, even without requiring the underlying uncertainty itself to be resolved. There is a great deal more to uncover about how this old, protective system operates, and about how a person might learn to hold it with a little more steadiness, a little more compassion, even while sitting, quite fully, inside the unknown. For now, let this settle, the way heat slowly leaves a body at rest, gradually, gently, without needing to be rushed, and let's continue on, quietly, from here. What we've explored so far has focused largely on how this fear feels, and where it comes from, deep within the body and the brain. But there is another dimension worth turning toward now, one that reaches beyond feeling alone, into something more practical, the way this fear actually shapes what a person thinks, notices, and does. Because fear of the unknown is not simply an emotional experience, contained neatly within the chest or the stomach, present for a moment and then gone. It reaches further than that. It touches judgment. It touches attention. It touches behavior itself, often in ways a person may not fully recognize while it is happening. Consider, for a moment, what it means to think clearly. Clear thinking usually requires a certain kind of internal steadiness, a quiet space in which options can be weighed, compared, and considered without excessive urgency or noise. Fear disrupts this steadiness. It introduces urgency where patience would serve better. It narrows focus at precisely the moment when broader perspective would be most valuable. And so, one of the more significant effects of fear of the unknown is this: it can quietly interfere with the very process of thinking clearly, making it noticeably harder to weigh options with the kind of calm, balanced attention that good decisions usually require. This interference often shows up most clearly in ambiguous situations, situations where the right path forward is not obvious, where outcomes cannot be easily predicted or measured. In these moments, the mind is asked to do something particularly demanding, to judge, as accurately as possible, what various choices might lead to, without having complete information to work from. This is difficult under the best of circumstances. Under the influence of fear, it becomes considerably more difficult still. The mind, already unsettled by uncertainty, often struggles to hold multiple possibilities steadily in view, to compare them fairly, to reason through them with any real sense of calm. This struggle frequently produces a very particular, very recognizable pattern, one many people have experienced firsthand, even if they never had a name for it. This pattern is often called decision paralysis, and it tends to arise specifically in situations where outcomes remain unclear. Rather than moving forward, even tentatively, a person facing significant uncertainty may instead find themselves delaying, again and again, unable to commit to any single choice. Not because they lack the desire to decide, but because the fear surrounding an unclear outcome makes any single choice feel disproportionately risky, disproportionately final, even when, in reality, many choices could later be adjusted or revised. This hesitation is not laziness, and it is not indecisiveness in the way that word is sometimes used dismissively. It is, instead, a direct consequence of how fear interacts with uncertainty. When the mind cannot clearly foresee the consequences of a choice, committing to that choice can feel like stepping blindly off a ledge, even when the actual stakes involved are relatively small. And so, quite understandably, many people delay, waiting for clarity that may never fully arrive, hoping that more information will eventually make the decision feel safer than it currently does. Alongside this tendency toward delay, fear of the unknown often produces another related pattern, a strong pull toward excessive caution. When outcomes are unclear, many people instinctively gravitate toward whichever option appears safest, even when that option is not necessarily the wisest or the most beneficial in the longer term. This is not a coincidence. It follows naturally from everything we've discussed so far. If the mind treats uncertainty itself as a kind of warning sign, then it makes a certain intuitive sense that decisions made under uncertainty would lean heavily toward whichever path seems to minimize risk, even at the cost of missed opportunity, missed growth, or missed benefit. This tendency toward caution, while understandable, can sometimes create its own quiet cost. A person might avoid a genuinely promising opportunity, not because the opportunity itself carries excessive risk, but because the unknown surrounding it feels uncomfortable enough to outweigh its potential reward. Over time, small moments of excessive caution can accumulate, gently shaping the overall direction of a life, often without the person fully realizing how much this underlying fear has influenced their choices along the way. Closely related to all of this is another important thread, one that touches something deeply human: the powerful role that control, or the lack of it, plays in how distressing a situation feels. There is a well-observed pattern in human experience. People often feel considerably more distressed by situations they cannot control, even when the actual level of risk involved is quite small. This might seem, at first glance, slightly irrational. Shouldn't distress correspond primarily to the size of the actual danger, rather than to how much control a person happens to have over it? And yet, again and again, this is not how the mind seems to operate. A small risk, fully within a person's control, often feels far less threatening than an equally small, or even smaller, risk that lies completely outside their control. Consider, for instance, the difference between driving a car and being a passenger in one. Statistically, both involve similar risks. And yet many people report feeling noticeably calmer while driving themselves, precisely because they retain some sense of control over the situation, compared to the more unsettled feeling that can sometimes arise while sitting, powerless, in the passenger seat. This is not really about the actual level of danger at all. It is about the psychological experience of control, and how deeply that experience shapes the way risk is felt, rather than simply calculated. This helps explain why uncertainty, in particular, tends to feel so uniquely distressing. Uncertainty, almost by definition, involves a loss of control. When outcomes are unknown, there is very little a person can do to directly influence or adjust them in the moment. And this loss of control, this inability to actively shape what happens next, appears to amplify distress considerably, often well beyond what the actual objective risk alone would seem to justify. This connects closely with another important piece of this picture, the relationship between information, or the lack of it, and a person's felt sense of their own ability to cope. When people lack sufficient information about a situation, they often, quite understandably, begin to doubt their own capacity to handle whatever comes next. This makes a certain kind of sense. Coping, in most practical situations, requires some degree of preparation, knowing roughly what to expect, and having at least a general plan for how to respond. Without adequate information, this kind of preparation becomes difficult, sometimes impossible. And so, faced with an information gap, many people quietly begin to feel less capable, less equipped, less confident in their own ability to manage whatever the future might hold. This diminished sense of coping ability tends to increase distress about the future considerably. It is one thing to face an unclear situation while feeling reasonably confident in one's own resilience and adaptability. It is quite another to face that same unclear situation while simultaneously doubting whether one will be able to handle it at all, regardless of how it eventually unfolds. This second experience, uncertainty layered together with self-doubt, tends to feel significantly heavier than uncertainty alone. This growing distress often intensifies further around a very particular kind of question, one that seems to weigh especially heavily on the mind, the question of how bad a potential outcome might actually be. People often become noticeably more anxious, specifically when they are unable to estimate the severity of a possible negative outcome, even compared to situations where the negative outcome, though certain, is at least clearly defined and bounded. There is something particularly unsettling about an undefined worst case. A known difficulty, however unpleasant, has edges. It can be measured, planned around, mentally prepared for. But an unknown, unbounded possibility carries no such edges. Without any clear sense of how severe an outcome might become, the mind is left without any natural stopping point for its own worry, and this absence of a clear boundary can make even relatively minor uncertainties feel unexpectedly overwhelming. This absence of boundaries brings us, quite naturally, to one of the more revealing patterns explored so far tonight, the particular way ambiguous situations tend to activate the imagination, often in distinctly negative directions. When a situation remains unclear, the mind rarely stays passive or empty while waiting for clarity to arrive. Instead, it tends to actively generate possibilities, filling the uncertain space with imagined scenarios, attempting, in its own way, to resolve the ambiguity through mental simulation rather than actual information. And as we touched on earlier, these imagined scenarios frequently lean toward the negative, toward worst-case possibilities, rather than neutral or positive ones. This tendency deserves a closer look, because it reveals something important about the relationship between imagination and fear. It is not simply that uncertain situations are frightening in themselves. It is that the mind, faced with an information gap, often constructs its own frightening content to fill that gap, drawing not from confirmed facts, but from imagined possibilities, shaped heavily by that old evolutionary bias toward caution we explored earlier in this journey. This process, the mind filling missing information with worst-case assumptions, can meaningfully distort how frightening a given unknown actually appears to be. In many cases, the imagined version of an uncertain situation, constructed by an anxious, gap-filling mind, ends up considerably more alarming than whatever eventually turns out to be true in reality. The unknown itself, stripped of imagination, is often neutral. It is simply unclear. But once imagination enters that unclear space, particularly imagination shaped by an old, deeply ingrained caution toward the unfamiliar, the unknown can begin to feel far more threatening than the situation actually warrants. This is, in many ways, one of the more freeing realizations available within this whole exploration. A significant portion of the fear surrounding uncertainty may not come from the unknown situation itself, but from the mind's own imagined elaboration of it, a story constructed internally, often quite vividly, long before any real information has arrived to confirm or deny it. As we move forward from here, into the segments still ahead, we will begin exploring this relationship between imagination and fear a little further, how the stories the mind tells about uncertain situations can be gently noticed, and gradually held with a bit more perspective, even while the actual outcome remains unknown. There is still much more to uncover about how this fear moves through thought, behavior, and imagination, and about how a person might begin relating to it with a little more steadiness over time. For now, let this settle quietly, the way a held breath slowly releases, without force, without hurry, and let's continue on gently from here. That gentle release we just spoke of, that slow easing of a held breath, brings us naturally into a closer look at something we've circled several times already, but haven't yet fully unpacked: the particular way the mind sometimes runs ahead of reality itself, building entire narratives of disaster out of little more than a few missing details. This tendency has a name, one that may already feel familiar. It is often called catastrophizing, and it describes something quite specific: the mind's habit of taking incomplete information and extending it, almost automatically, toward extreme, worst-case conclusions. It is not simply imagining a negative possibility. It is imagining the most severe version of that possibility, often skipping over the many milder, more likely outcomes that could just as easily explain the same situation. Consider a small, ordinary example. A scheduled phone call is abruptly moved to a later time, with no explanation given. A mind prone to catastrophizing might not simply wonder whether the reschedule was caused by something minor, a conflict, a delay, a simple change of plans. Instead, it might leap, almost instantly, toward far more serious explanations: the assumption of bad news, of some unspoken problem, of a situation quietly unraveling behind the scenes. The available facts remain exactly the same in both cases. Only the story built around those facts has changed, and yet that story alone can be enough to produce real, tangible distress, disproportionate to anything that has actually occurred. This pattern connects to something we touched on earlier, now worth exploring in a bit more depth: the mind's underlying need to resolve ambiguity as quickly as possible, sometimes at the cost of accuracy. Ambiguity, as we've discussed at length, tends to feel uncomfortable. And when something feels uncomfortable, there is a natural pull toward resolving it, toward finding some kind of explanation, any explanation, simply to relieve the discomfort of not knowing. This creates an interesting, somewhat counterintuitive dynamic. Rather than waiting patiently for accurate information to arrive, the mind sometimes prefers to jump toward a conclusion prematurely, even an inaccurate one, simply because having any explanation, even a flawed one, feels more tolerable than having no explanation at all. This is not a conscious, deliberate choice. It happens quietly, almost reflexively, driven by that same deep discomfort with unresolved ambiguity we've explored throughout this journey. This tendency toward premature conclusions becomes particularly significant when those conclusions lean toward negative outcomes. Because of something worth sitting with carefully, anticipation itself can often feel worse than the actual event it anticipates. When a person expects a bad outcome, even before that outcome has been confirmed, the anxiety generated by that expectation can begin accumulating immediately, stretching out over the entire waiting period, often extending far longer, and sometimes feeling far more intense than however the actual event eventually unfolds. This helps explain a pattern many people have quietly noticed in their own lives, that the days or weeks leading up to an uncertain outcome can feel unexpectedly heavier than the outcome itself, once it finally arrives. The anticipation, fueled by imagined negative possibilities, often does more emotional damage across its extended duration than the single, confined moment of the actual event ever manages to do. This entire dynamic connects closely to something else worth clarifying, because it is easy to conflate two experiences that, while related, are not quite identical. Many people describe themselves as afraid of change, when what they are actually experiencing, more precisely, is a fear of the unknown that so often accompanies change. This distinction matters. Change itself is not inherently frightening. A change towards something clearly positive, clearly understood, clearly beneficial, rarely produces the same unease as an uncertain change might. What tends to generate discomfort is not the shift itself, but the uncertainty so often bundled together with it, the unknown outcomes, unknown adjustments, unknown consequences that frequently accompany any significant transition. A new job may bring genuine excitement and opportunity, and yet still generate unease, not because change is inherently threatening, but because so much about that new chapter remains, at least initially, unknown. Recognizing this distinction can be quietly useful. It suggests that what feels difficult about change is not always the change itself, but rather the accompanying uncertainty, the not yet knowing how things will unfold. And this reframing opens a slightly different question, not why do I fear change, but what specifically about this unknown feels most unsettling, a question that often leads toward more precise, and ultimately more manageable, understanding. This becomes especially relevant, and especially intense, when uncertainty touches the most significant areas of a person's life. Uncertainty surrounding minor, everyday matters, though uncomfortable, tends to remain relatively contained. But uncertainty surrounding major life choices, relationships, health, career direction, tends to feel considerably heavier, considerably harder to hold with any real sense of ease. This intensification makes a certain intuitive sense. These major domains, relationships, health, career, tend to carry significant weight in a person's overall sense of stability and well-being. Uncertainty within these domains does not simply represent an isolated unknown, contained neatly within one small corner of life. It often feels as though it touches everything else as well, casting a wider shadow across a person's broader sense of security. An uncertain diagnosis does not merely raise questions about one's physical health. It can ripple outward, touching worries about work, about family, about the future in a much broader sense. An uncertain relationship does not simply raise questions about one particular connection. It can shake a person's broader sense of belonging, stability, even identity. This is part of why uncertainty in these major life areas so often feels disproportionately intense, compared to smaller, more contained forms of ambiguity. And yet, even within these significant, high-stakes areas of uncertainty, it becomes clear, upon closer look, that not everyone experiences this discomfort with equal intensity. People vary considerably in how strongly they experience fear of the unknown. Some individuals seem to move through ambiguous situations with relative ease, tolerating unresolved questions without excessive distress. Others find even small amounts of uncertainty deeply uncomfortable, difficult to sit with for any length of time at all. This variation extends even further than simple degree. People also differ meaningfully in how they perceive uncertainty in the first place, which helps explain a curious pattern many people have likely noticed. The exact same unknown situation can feel mildly inconvenient to one person, while feeling deeply distressing to another. The external facts remain identical in both cases. What differs is the internal relationship each person holds toward not knowing, shaped by a complex mixture of temperament, history, and deeply ingrained patterns of thought. This variation is not simply a matter of some people having this fear, and others being entirely free of it. Instead, researchers increasingly describe this experience as existing along a spectrum, often referred to as intolerance of uncertainty. Rather than a simple binary, present or absent, this trait appears to exist in varying degrees across a wide continuum, with most people falling somewhere between the extremes, some leaning toward greater comfort with ambiguity, others leaning toward greater discomfort, but very few sitting at either absolute end. This spectrum carries real significance beyond simple personality variation. A lower tolerance for uncertainty, sitting further along this continuum, tends to correlate with increased levels of worry, and can meaningfully contribute to broader patterns of anxiety over time. This connection has become an important focus within psychological research, precisely because it offers a clearer, more specific lens through which to understand why some individuals seem to struggle more persistently with fear and worry than others, even when facing objectively similar circumstances. Researchers studying this pattern describe intolerance of uncertainty as a genuinely meaningful factor, one that helps explain a great deal of variation in how different people experience and respond to ambiguity throughout their lives. It offers a way of understanding this experience that moves beyond simple character description, towards something more precise, more grounded in observable, measurable patterns of thought and response. There is something quietly reassuring in this framing. If intolerance of uncertainty exists along a spectrum, shaped by a combination of temperament and experience, then it is not a fixed, unchangeable trait, carved permanently into a person's character. It is, instead, a tendency, one capable of shifting gradually over time, particularly with greater understanding and greater gentleness toward the ways this old, deeply human fear continues to show up in everyday life. As we move forward from here, into the reflections still ahead, we will begin exploring this variation a little further, what shapes a person's particular relationship with uncertainty, and how, gradually, gently, that relationship might soften over time, even without requiring the underlying unknown itself to ever fully resolve. For now, let this settle quietly, the way understanding often settles, slowly, without force, simply by being given enough space to arrive, and let's continue on from here. We spoke, just now, of understanding arriving slowly, given enough space to settle. And that idea, understanding shaped gradually, over time, leads quite naturally into the next layer of this exploration. Where does this particular relationship with uncertainty actually come from? Why does one person move through ambiguity with relative calm, while another finds even small unknowns deeply unsettling? Much of the answer, it turns out, lives in the past. Past experiences carry a great deal of quiet influence over how a person meets the unfamiliar. This includes, significantly, experiences of difficulty or trauma, as well as the broader shape of a person's upbringing. Someone who grew up in an environment marked by frequent instability, unpredictability, or emotional volatility often develops a heightened sensitivity to unfamiliar situations later in life. This makes a certain intuitive sense. If uncertainty, in the past, was reliably followed by something difficult or painful, the mind understandably learns to treat uncertainty itself as a signal worth taking seriously, even decades later, even in entirely different circumstances. This learning does not require constant repetition to take hold. Sometimes a single significant experience, particularly during childhood or adolescence, can leave a lasting imprint, quietly teaching the nervous system that the unknown deserves heightened caution. This imprint often operates far beneath conscious memory. A person may not consciously recall the specific experience that shaped this sensitivity, and yet the underlying pattern, the elevated wariness toward ambiguity, can persist regardless, showing up in situations that, on the surface, bear little resemblance to whatever originally created it. Alongside direct experience, there is another quieter influence at work, one carried not through what happened directly to a person, but through what they were taught, often indirectly, by the important figures in their early life. Parents, teachers, and other influential adults shape, often without realizing it, how strongly a child comes to react to unfamiliar situations. A parent who models calm, measured responses to uncertainty tends to pass along something valuable, an implicit sense that the unknown, while sometimes uncomfortable, is generally survivable. A parent who models frequent anxiety or alarm in the face of ambiguity, by contrast, often passes along a different lesson, one suggesting that uncertainty is something to be feared, avoided, or approached with heightened vigilance. This kind of learning tends to happen gradually, accumulated across countless small moments, rather than through any single dramatic lesson. A child observes, again and again, how the adults around them respond to unexpected news, unfamiliar situations, unplanned changes. And through this quiet, repeated observation, a template begins to form, one that often continues shaping that child's relationship with uncertainty well into adulthood, long after the original influences have faded into the background. This pattern extends into a related, closely connected form of learning, one shaped less by specific teaching, and more by the general emotional texture of a person's early life. Life experiences that consistently taught a person to expect instability or unpredictability tend to strengthen fear of the unknown considerably. This might involve financial insecurity during childhood, frequent relocation, inconsistent caregiving, or any number of circumstances in which the future genuinely was difficult to predict, and genuinely did carry real, tangible risk. In these environments, heightened vigilance toward uncertainty was not an overreaction. It was an accurate, adaptive response to circumstances that truly did require careful attention and caution. The difficulty arises later, often much later, when these same patterns of heightened vigilance continue operating in environments that no longer carry the same level of genuine unpredictability. A nervous system trained, quite understandably, to treat uncertainty as a serious signal during a genuinely unstable childhood may continue responding with that same intensity decades later, even within a life that has since become considerably more stable and secure. The old pattern persists, not because it remains accurate, but because it was so deeply, so thoroughly learned. Beyond these individual histories, there is a broader layer of influence worth considering as well, one that extends beyond any single family or personal experience, into something larger, shared across entire communities and cultures. Cultural background plays a meaningful role in shaping how strongly a person tends to fear uncertainty. Some cultures place particular emphasis on routine, structure, and predictability, cultivating, often through generations of shared practice and belief, a strong preference for clear expectations and stable, well-defined paths. Other cultures place relatively greater value on flexibility, spontaneity, and openness to change, cultivating, in turn, a somewhat different relationship with ambiguity, one that tends to hold uncertainty with a bit more ease. These broader cultural values do not operate abstractly, separate from individual lives. They filter down, quietly and consistently, into the everyday teachings and expectations a person absorbs from childhood onward. A child raised within a cultural context that strongly emphasizes certainty, structure, and predictability is likely to internalize these values early, developing, quite naturally, a somewhat lower tolerance for ambiguity later in life. A child raised within a cultural context that embraces flexibility and openness toward the unknown may develop, by contrast, a comparatively higher tolerance for uncertainty, having been shaped, from an early age, to view ambiguity as simply one ordinary part of life, rather than something inherently alarming. This cultural shaping helps explain part of the broader variation we discussed earlier, why different people, even within similar circumstances, can hold such different relationships with uncertainty. It is not simply a matter of individual temperament, or individual life experience, though both certainly matter a great deal. It is also, in part, a matter of the broader cultural water in which a person was raised, the deeply embedded values and expectations absorbed long before conscious reasoning ever had the chance to weigh in. Given everything we've explored so far tonight, From ancient evolutionary origins to early childhood learning to broader cultural influence, it becomes clear that fear of the unknown is a remarkably rich, multifaceted experience, shaped by biology, personal history, and culture all at once. And this complexity has increasingly caught the attention of researchers, who have moved, over recent years, toward treating fear of the unknown not merely as a vague, loosely defined feeling, but as something considerably more precise, a genuine, identifiable psychological construct, worthy of careful, systematic study. This shift in scientific understanding represents something meaningful. In earlier eras, discomfort with uncertainty was often described in fairly general terms, treated more as a loosely defined personality trait than as something with clear, measurable structure. Over time, however, this understanding has evolved considerably. Fear of the unknown is now increasingly recognized, within psychological research, as a measurable psychological mechanism, one that carries genuine practical relevance, particularly in areas such as treatment for anxiety-related difficulties, and broader efforts to build psychological resilience. This evolving scientific understanding extends beyond psychology alone, into the more physical territory of neuroscience as well. Researchers have identified specific brain systems directly involved in processing uncertainty, systems that can now be observed, measured, and studied with increasing precision. This matters considerably, because it further reinforces something we've touched on throughout this exploration, that fear of the unknown is not simply an abstract, vague feeling, but a measurable neural process, grounded in observable activity within particular structures and networks of the brain. Within this growing field of neuroscience, uncertainty has emerged as a particularly important area of focus, precisely because of something quite specific. Uncertainty tends to function as a significant driver of anxiety, often more so than a clearly visible, well-defined threat. This might seem, at first, slightly counterintuitive. Shouldn't a visible, confirmed threat generate more anxiety than an uncertain, unconfirmed one? And yet, in many cases, research suggests the opposite. A possible future threat, one that remains unclear and unresolved, is considerably harder to prepare for than a threat that is fully visible and well understood. And this difficulty in preparation, as we've discussed earlier in this journey, tends to generate a particularly persistent, particularly draining form of anxiety, precisely because there is no clear target toward which that anxious energy can be directed. This brings us toward a particularly specific and revealing area of research, one worth sitting with closely as this segment draws toward its close. Researchers have found that individuals with high trait anxiety, meaning a general, relatively stable tendency toward anxious response across many different situations, tend to show notably stronger brain responses to uncertain cues, compared to individuals with lower trait anxiety. This heightened response appears particularly pronounced within brain regions involved in memory and contextual processing, regions responsible for helping a person situate a current experience within the broader context of past experience and learned expectation. This finding offers a particularly clear window into everything we've explored throughout this journey so far. It suggests that a person's heightened sensitivity to uncertainty is not simply a matter of personality or preference, existing in some abstract, disconnected way. It reflects genuine, measurable differences in how certain brains process ambiguous information, differences shaped, quite plausibly, by the accumulated influence of past experience, learned expectation, and deeply ingrained patterns of contextual memory. This is, in many ways, a fitting place to pause and let everything settle for a moment. We have traveled a considerable distance across this segment, from the quiet influence of childhood experience, through the broader shaping force of culture, into the precise, measurable language of modern neuroscience. And what emerges, across all of it, is a consistent, coherent picture. Fear of the unknown, however personal and however deeply felt, is not random. It is shaped, layer upon layer, by history, by environment, by biology, each contributing its own quiet influence to how any single person, in any single moment, experiences the simple, universal act of not yet knowing what comes next. As we move forward into the reflections still ahead, we will begin turning towards something a little different in tone, exploring not only where this fear comes from, but how, gradually and gently, a person might learn to hold it a little more easily, without needing every uncertainty in life to first be resolved. For now, let this settle quietly, the way accumulated understanding often does, resting gently in the background, ready to be built upon further as we continue on from here. We left off with that image of understanding resting gently in the background, ready to be built upon. And it is exactly that, building further, layer by layer, that we continue with now, moving a little deeper still into the specific regions of the brain that seem most closely involved in this experience of uncertainty. One region in particular deserves closer attention here, a structure called the parahippocampal gyrus. This area, closely connected to memory processing, appears to play a meaningful role in how anxious individuals specifically process uncertainty. Its involvement is worth pausing on, because it reinforces something we touched on just before, that circuits related to memory, to contextual understanding, to the way past experience gets woven into present interpretation, seem to matter a great deal when it comes to how the unknown is processed within the brain. This is not simply an emotional reaction occurring in isolation. It appears deeply intertwined with how memory itself operates, shaping, moment to moment, how a current uncertain situation gets filtered through the lens of everything previously learned and experienced. Alongside this region, researchers have identified another area of particular interest, called the right anterior insula. This structure has been linked, quite specifically, to how people with high intolerance of uncertainty respond when faced with genuinely uncertain outcomes. The insula, more broadly, is often associated with internal bodily awareness, the sense of what is happening within one's own body, including sensations tied to discomfort, unease, and emotional intensity. Its particular involvement in uncertainty processing helps explain something we've touched on throughout this journey, the deeply embodied nature of this fear, the way it is felt not merely as an abstract thought, but as something registered, quite viscerally, within the body itself. This growing body of research also points towards something else worth understanding clearly, a distinction between how the body responds to a known threat, compared to an unknown one. Physiological reactions appear to differ meaningfully depending on whether a threat is clearly identified, or remains uncertain and undefined. This suggests that the body does not treat all forms of danger identically. It seems to process known threats and unknown threats through somewhat distinct pathways, responding differently depending on how much clarity is actually available. A known threat, however serious, offers the nervous system something concrete to organize around. An unknown threat offers no such anchor, and this absence appears to shape the body's response in its own particular way, often producing that more diffuse, less targeted form of anxious activation we explored earlier in this journey. This lack of a clear target connects closely to another important pattern, one with significant implications for how fear of the unknown tends to unfold and spread over time. Uncertainty can produce what researchers describe as generalized reactions, meaning a person does not simply respond fearfully to one specific unknown threat, contained neatly within a single situation. Instead, that fearful response can extend outward, spreading toward other situations that merely resemble the original source of uncertainty, even when those new situations carry little genuine risk of their own. This generalization tendency appears to be particularly pronounced in individuals with high intolerance of uncertainty. Research suggests that these individuals may show stronger generalization, not only toward negative or threatening cues, but toward positive cues as well, extending cautious, uncertain responses even into situations that might otherwise be experienced as safe or pleasant. This broader generalization carries a particularly significant consequence, one worth sitting with for a moment. It can make the world, more broadly, feel less safely differentiated. Rather than clearly distinguishing between situations that genuinely warrant caution and situations that do not, the mind, under the influence of strong intolerance of uncertainty, may begin treating a wider and wider range of ambiguous situations with similar wariness, regardless of how much actual risk each one genuinely carries. Given this tendency toward generalization, it becomes easier to understand why high intolerance of uncertainty so often manifests through particular, recognizable patterns of behavior. Several of these patterns are worth naming directly, because many people will likely recognize at least some of them, either within themselves, or within people close to them. One common pattern involves over-planning, an intense, sometimes exhausting effort to anticipate and prepare for every possible outcome in advance. While reasonable planning is, of course, a healthy and often valuable habit, over-planning tends to extend well beyond what any situation genuinely requires, driven less by practical necessity, and more by an underlying discomfort with leaving anything unresolved or unaddressed. A second common pattern involves repeated checking, returning again and again to verify information that has, in most cases, already been confirmed. This might involve repeatedly checking a message, a lock, a schedule, or some other detail, not because new information has actually emerged, but because the underlying discomfort with uncertainty has not yet been fully soothed, prompting the mind to seek reassurance through repetition, even when that repetition offers little genuine new information. A third closely related pattern involves excessive reassurance seeking, repeatedly asking others to confirm that everything is, in fact, all right. This pattern reflects something we explored earlier in this journey, the way fear of the unknown can push a person to lean heavily on external sources of certainty, seeking from others the sense of clarity and stability that feels so difficult to generate internally, on one's own. This tendency toward reassurance seeking connects to a broader pattern worth naming clearly, fear of the unknown can lead people, quite understandably, to seek excessive reassurance or certainty from the people around them. This is not, in itself, an unreasonable response. Seeking support and clarity from trusted others is, in moderate amounts, a healthy and adaptive behavior. The difficulty arises when this reassurance seeking becomes excessive, repeated so frequently, and relied upon so heavily, that it begins to interfere with a person's ability to tolerate even small amounts of uncertainty on their own, without immediate external confirmation. Alongside reassurance seeking, some individuals respond to uncertainty through a somewhat different strategy, an urgent effort to restore some sense of control as quickly as possible. This might involve making a hasty decision simply to end the discomfort of not having decided, or taking some kind of decisive action mainly to relieve the internal tension of remaining in an unresolved state. This strategy often does succeed, at least temporarily, in reducing short-term discomfort. The relief, however, tends to come specifically from having acted, rather than necessarily from the quality or wisdom of the action itself. In some cases, this urgency toward control can lead to decisions made a little too quickly, before enough genuine information has actually become available. This connects closely to a related coping pattern worth understanding clearly: the tendency to seek quick answers, even when those answers remain incomplete or, in some cases, simply inaccurate. Faced with the discomfort of not knowing, some individuals reach eagerly toward any available explanation, prioritizing the relief of having an answer, any answer, over the more patient, more demanding process of waiting for a fuller, more accurate picture to eventually emerge. This tendency mirrors something we explored earlier in this journey: the mind's underlying preference for resolving ambiguity quickly, sometimes at the expense of accuracy, simply because an incomplete answer often feels more tolerable than an unresolved question. Finally, one of the most widely recognized patterns associated with fear of the unknown involves avoidance, a tendency to stay away from unfamiliar situations altogether, specifically in order to reduce the discomfort that ambiguity tends to bring. Rather than facing an uncertain situation directly, a person guided strongly by fear of the unknown may instead choose to sidestep it entirely, avoiding new experiences, new decisions, or new possibilities, simply because the unfamiliarity involved feels too uncomfortable to approach directly. This avoidance pattern, understandable as it is, tends to carry its own quiet cost over time. While it may offer genuine short-term relief, reducing the immediate discomfort of facing an unknown situation, it often does so at the expense of longer-term growth, opportunity, and experience. Many meaningful possibilities in life, new relationships, new opportunities, new directions, necessarily involve some degree of uncertainty. And a strong pattern of avoidance, while protective in the moment, can gradually narrow the range of experiences a person allows themselves to encounter, simply because so many of life's more meaningful unknowns remain, by their very nature, unknown until they are actually approached. Taken together, these patterns, over-planning, repeated checking, reassurance seeking, hasty control-restoring decisions, quick but incomplete answers, and outright avoidance, offer a fairly clear, fairly comprehensive picture of how fear of the unknown tends to express itself in observable behavior. Each of these patterns represents a different strategy for managing the same underlying discomfort, the discomfort of not knowing, and each offers, at best, only partial and often temporary relief, rather than any lasting resolution of the uncertainty itself. As we continue forward into the material still ahead, we will begin turning our attention increasingly toward a gentler, more constructive direction, exploring not only how this fear shows up in behavior, but how a person might begin relating to these patterns with a bit more awareness, and eventually, a bit more ease. There is still much more of this landscape left to explore together. For now, let this settle quietly, the way recognition often does, arriving softly, without judgment, simply making space for a little more understanding than was there before, and let's continue on gently from here. That soft recognition we spoke of a moment ago, arriving without judgment, leads us now toward a slightly deeper layer of this same territory, one worth approaching with particular gentleness, because it touches on what happens when these patterns we've just explored persist, unaddressed, over longer stretches of time. Beyond the specific behaviors we named a moment ago, over-planning, checking, reassurance-seeking, avoidance, there is another, somewhat quieter consequence worth naming directly. Fear of the unknown can produce something that might be described as emotional paralysis, a state in which a person finds it genuinely difficult to move forward, simply because clarity has not yet arrived. This differs slightly from the decision paralysis we explored earlier, which involves specific, discrete choices. Emotional paralysis tends to feel broader, more diffuse, less about any single decision, and more about an overall sense of being unable to proceed, unable to settle into forward motion, while so much remains unresolved and unknown. This state can feel particularly disorienting, because it often exists without any single, identifiable cause. A person experiencing this kind of paralysis may not point to one specific unresolved question. They may simply feel generally stuck, generally unable to move with any real sense of momentum, weighed down by an accumulated, somewhat formless sense of not knowing what comes next, across multiple areas of life at once. Closely related to this experience of paralysis is something we touched on earlier, now worth revisiting with a bit more depth: the tendency some individuals develop toward avoiding new or unfamiliar situations altogether. This avoidance, as we discussed, often begins as a reasonable, protective response to discomfort. But over time, particularly when relied upon consistently, this pattern can begin to shape the overall contour of a person's life, quietly narrowing the range of experiences, relationships, and opportunities they allow themselves to engage with, simply because so many of these possibilities necessarily involve some degree of unfamiliarity. When these patterns, paralysis and avoidance among them, persist over extended periods, rather than arising occasionally in response to a single difficult situation, something further can begin to develop. Chronic uncertainty, sustained over months or years rather than days or weeks, tends to contribute meaningfully to persistent, ongoing worry. This connection helps explain part of why fear of the unknown is so closely linked with broader anxiety-related difficulties. It is not simply that uncertainty produces brief, temporary discomfort in any single moment. It is that sustained, prolonged uncertainty, particularly when a person struggles significantly to tolerate it, can gradually contribute to a more persistent, more entrenched pattern of chronic worry, extending well beyond any single uncertain situation. This persistent pattern, when it continues over a long enough period, can contribute meaningfully to the development of chronic anxiety disorders in some individuals. This does not mean that everyone who experiences discomfort with uncertainty will necessarily develop a clinical anxiety condition. Most people move through periods of uncertainty, even difficult, prolonged periods, without developing anything resembling a diagnosable disorder. But for individuals who struggle particularly intensely with ambiguity, especially when that struggle persists across many different areas of life, over extended periods of time, this ongoing difficulty appears to represent one genuine, meaningful contributing factor among the broader landscape of factors involved in chronic anxiety. When fear of the unknown becomes chronic in this way, persisting steadily over time rather than arising only occasionally, its effects tend to extend considerably beyond emotional experience alone. Chronic fear of the unknown can become disruptive enough to meaningfully affect a person's emotional well-being, their social functioning, and their physical health, all at once. This broad reach deserves particular attention, because it illustrates just how far-reaching this experience can become when left to persist, largely unaddressed, over an extended period. Emotionally, chronic uncertainty can contribute to persistent low-grade distress, a background hum of unease that colors daily experience, even during moments that might otherwise feel calm or pleasant. Socially, this same chronic discomfort can quietly interfere with relationships and connection, as patterns like excessive reassurance seeking, or persistent avoidance of new social situations, gradually place strain on friendships, partnerships, and broader social engagement. And physically, chronic activation of the body's stress response, the same hormonal cascade we explored earlier in this journey, cortisol, adrenaline, heightened bodily alertness, sustained over long periods rather than resolving after a brief episode, can begin to take a genuine toll on physical health, contributing to fatigue, tension, sleep difficulty, and a range of other physical symptoms associated with prolonged stress. This same broad pattern, touching emotional, social, and physical functioning all at once, appears consistently enough across research that it deserves restating clearly. Chronic fear of uncertainty can become a genuinely broad problem, one that extends well beyond any single domain of a person's life, precisely because uncertainty itself touches so many different aspects of daily experience simultaneously. This broad reach connects to something particularly significant within more recent psychological research, a shift in how fear of the unknown is understood, not simply as one feature among many within a single specific diagnosis, but as something considerably more far-reaching. Current research increasingly links this fear to a broader range of emotional difficulties than anxiety alone, identifying patterns that appear to run across multiple different mental health conditions, rather than remaining confined neatly within just one. This observation has led researchers toward an important conceptual shift, one worth understanding clearly, because it reflects a genuinely significant development in how this entire subject is now approached. Fear of the unknown is increasingly treated, within contemporary research, as what is sometimes called a transdiagnostic factor. This particular term describes something specific, a psychological pattern that shows up meaningfully across many different kinds of psychological difficulty, rather than being limited to just one particular diagnosis or condition. This represents a considerable evolution in scientific understanding. In earlier eras, fear of the unknown, or more precisely, difficulty tolerating uncertainty, was often understood primarily as one component within generalized anxiety disorder, specifically, a single diagnostic category among many. Over time, however, this understanding has broadened considerably. The field has increasingly moved away from viewing this experience as belonging to just one particular diagnosis, and toward understanding it instead as a much broader, more trans-situational vulnerability factor, one capable of contributing meaningfully to a wide range of different psychological difficulties, rather than remaining confined to any single category. This broader understanding carries genuine significance within the field of modern anxiety research more generally. Fear of the unknown has become an important area of continued study, precisely because it appears to influence several distinct aspects of how anxiety, more broadly, tends to unfold over time. It appears relevant not only to how anxiety initially develops, but also to how it tends to persist once established, and even to how effectively it responds to various forms of treatment and intervention. This growing recognition that difficulty tolerating uncertainty may represent a genuinely foundational factor underlying a wide range of psychological struggles, rather than a narrow feature limited to just one particular condition, marks a meaningful shift in how this entire subject is now approached, both within research and increasingly within clinical practice as well. There is something worth sitting with quietly here at the close of this particular set of reflections. What began many segments ago as a simple, universal human experience, the discomfort of not knowing what comes next, has revealed itself, layer by layer, to be something considerably deeper and more consequential than it might have first appeared. Rooted in ancient survival mechanisms, shaped by memory, by upbringing, by culture, expressed through measurable activity within specific regions of the brain, and now understood, increasingly, as a factor reaching across a broad landscape of human psychological experience, rather than remaining confined to any single corner of it. And yet, even within this depth and complexity, something gentler remains true throughout. This fear, however far-reaching, however deeply rooted, is not a fixed, unchangeable feature of who a person is. It is a pattern, shaped by countless influences, and patterns, by their nature, retain some capacity to shift, gradually, gently, over time. As we move forward into the reflections still ahead, we will begin turning more directly toward this gentler territory, exploring not only the depth of this fear, but the equally real, equally human capacity to hold it with greater steadiness, greater understanding, and eventually, greater ease. For now, let this settle quietly, the way deep understanding often does, resting without urgency, simply present, ready to continue unfolding as we move onward together from here. We ended a moment ago on the idea of gentler territory still ahead, understanding continuing to unfold as we move forward together. And it is in that same unfolding spirit that we turn now towards something a little more expansive, exploring not just how this fear begins, but how it continues shaping a person's experience across time. One of the more significant developments in modern psychological thinking involves recognizing that fear of the unknown matters not only at the beginning of emotional difficulty, but throughout its entire course. Contemporary models increasingly emphasize this fear as something important not simply for explaining how certain emotional problems first arise, but for understanding how they continue, how they persist, sometimes for years, long after their original triggers have faded into the background. This distinction matters. A factor that only explains origins offers limited practical value once a difficulty has already taken hold. A factor that helps explain persistence, however, offers something considerably more useful: insight into why certain struggles continue, and potentially, insight into how they might eventually be eased. This same body of research has also turned toward a related, equally important question: why certain individuals appear considerably more vulnerable to psychological distress than others, even when facing broadly similar life circumstances. Responses to the unknown, researchers have found, offer meaningful insight into this variation. Two people might encounter remarkably similar uncertain situations, and yet experience dramatically different levels of resulting distress, largely because of how each person's mind and body characteristically respond to ambiguity itself. This helps explain part of the puzzle that has quietly run throughout this entire journey: why the same external circumstance can feel manageable to one person and overwhelming to another. This expanding understanding has also led researchers to recognize connections between fear of the unknown and psychological territory extending well beyond anxiety alone. Contemporary models increasingly link this fear not only to anxiety directly, but also to attachment patterns, the deeply ingrained ways a person learned, often in early childhood, to relate to closeness, security, and connection with others, as well as to neuroticism, a broader personality trait associated with heightened emotional reactivity more generally. These connections suggest something worth sitting with: that discomfort with uncertainty does not exist in isolation, cleanly separated from other aspects of emotional life. It appears woven, instead, into a broader fabric of personality and relational patterning, influencing, and being influenced by, many other dimensions of psychological experience. Perhaps one of the more unexpected findings within this broader research involves a connection between uncertainty and something considerably more existential: a person's sense of meaning in life. Fear of the unknown appears to function, in some sense, as a bridge between these two seemingly distant experiences: meaning and distress. Specifically, research suggests that people who experience lower levels of meaning in their lives often experience greater psychological distress, and that this relationship is partly explained through fear of the unknown itself, functioning as a connecting mechanism between the two. This finding deserves a moment of quiet reflection, because it offers a particularly elegant explanation for something that might otherwise seem disconnected. Why would a diminished sense of meaning contribute to greater distress? Researchers have found that fear of the unknown may help explain this relationship directly. A life that feels less clearly meaningful may also, quite naturally, feel less predictable, less oriented around any clear, guiding sense of direction or purpose. And this reduced sense of direction may leave a person more exposed to the discomfort of uncertainty, more vulnerable to the unsettled feeling of not knowing what comes next, precisely because there is less of an underlying narrative, less of a clear sense of meaning, to hold that uncertainty within a broader, more stable context. This helps illuminate something quietly profound about the relationship between meaning and uncertainty. A strong, clear sense of meaning does not eliminate uncertainty from a person's life. The future remains just as unknown, just as unpredictable, regardless of how meaningful a person's life feels. But meaning appears to change how that uncertainty is experienced, offering a kind of steady internal anchor, a broader sense of purpose and direction that can help hold ambiguity a little more gently, even when specific outcomes remain genuinely unclear. This growing web of connections, linking fear of the unknown to anxiety, to attachment, to neuroticism, to meaning itself, reinforces something we touched on toward the end of the previous segment, and worth restating clearly here. Fear of the unknown has become genuinely important within modern anxiety research, precisely because it appears to influence such a wide range of emotional difficulties, reaching considerably further than any single, narrow category might suggest. This broader relevance became particularly visible, in a very concrete and recent way, during a period many listeners will likely remember quite vividly, the early years of the global pandemic that began in 2020. This period offered researchers something relatively rare, a large-scale, real-world natural experiment in sustained, collective uncertainty, unfolding simultaneously across enormous numbers of people, all facing genuinely unclear, unpredictable circumstances at the same time. Within this context, researchers conducted a study following individuals across the first year of the pandemic, examining how intolerance of uncertainty related to psychological well-being throughout this uniquely uncertain period. The findings were notably clear. People with higher levels of intolerance of uncertainty consistently showed elevated levels of both anxiety and depression, compared with individuals who tolerated uncertainty relatively more easily. This pattern persisted, meaningfully, across the extended duration of the study, suggesting that this vulnerability was not simply a brief, temporary reaction, but a more sustained, ongoing pattern, present throughout an extended period of genuine, real-world unpredictability. Within this same study, researchers identified something particularly specific, worth highlighting on its own. Feelings of fear, examined as their own distinct emotional category, showed a particularly strong association with intolerance of uncertainty, more strongly, in fact, than several other emotional experiences examined within the same research. This finding reinforces something we've explored at length throughout this journey, the deep, foundational connection between uncertainty specifically, and the felt experience of fear, a connection that appears to hold not only in individual, everyday moments of ambiguity, but across large-scale, sustained periods of genuine collective unpredictability as well. This same body of research revealed something further, extending beyond fear alone, into the relationship between two commonly co-occurring difficulties, depression and anxiety. Researchers found that the relationship between depression and anxiety symptoms tended to become stronger over time, specifically among individuals who struggled more significantly with uncertainty. This suggests something worth considering carefully, that difficulty tolerating ambiguity may not only contribute independently to each of these difficulties on its own, but may also intensify the relationship between them, drawing depression and anxiety closer together, more tightly intertwined, particularly for individuals whose relationship with the unknown already tends towards significant discomfort. Taken together, These findings point toward a conclusion increasingly recognized throughout contemporary research, a conclusion worth sitting with directly. Intolerance of uncertainty appears to function as a genuine risk factor, one capable of meaningfully worsening mental health outcomes, specifically during periods of large-scale crisis, whether that crisis takes the form of a health emergency, an economic disruption, or broader social upheaval. During these kinds of sustained, collective periods of genuine unpredictability, this underlying vulnerability, present quietly within many individuals during ordinary times, tends to become considerably more visible and considerably more consequential. There is something important held within this recognition, something worth carrying forward gently as this segment draws to its close. This vulnerability, difficulty tolerating uncertainty, is not simply an individual quirk, relevant only in isolated, personal moments. It carries genuine significance across much larger scales as well, shaping how entire populations respond to shared periods of collective unpredictability, influencing, in aggregate, the broader psychological well-being of communities facing uncertain circumstances together. And yet, even within this larger, more sobering scope, something steady remains true, something we have returned to gently, again and again, throughout this entire exploration. Difficulty with uncertainty, however deeply rooted, however far-reaching its consequences, remains a pattern, not a permanent sentence. Patterns, as we've discussed, retain the capacity to shift, to soften, to be held with increasing steadiness over time, even without requiring the underlying uncertainty itself to ever fully disappear. As we move now toward the final stretch of this long, unfolding journey, we will begin drawing together everything explored so far, tracing the fuller shape of what fear of the unknown actually is, where it comes from, how it moves through mind and body, and what it might mean to hold it, finally, with a little more ease. For now, let this settle quietly, the way each piece of understanding has settled throughout this journey, resting gently alongside everything gathered before it, as we prepare to continue onward, together, toward the close of this exploration. We paused, a moment ago, on the idea of this pattern retaining its capacity to shift, to soften, gently, over time. And it is in that same spirit, one of gradual, gentle change, that we now arrive at the final stretch of this long journey together. Before we turn fully toward that gentler ground, there is a little more still worth understanding, because the story of this fear continues to unfold even now, even in the very recent present, shaped by conditions that would have been unfamiliar to earlier generations entirely. Newer research has begun turning its attention towards certain modern habits that did not exist, in their current form, until relatively recently, and that appear to meaningfully worsen how uncertainty affects a person's overall well-being. Two patterns in particular stand out within this emerging body of work: rumination, the tendency to circle back, again and again, to the same unresolved worry, turning it over repeatedly without reaching any new resolution, and something now widely known as doom scrolling, the compulsive, extended browsing of distressing or uncertain news, often late into the night, often without any clear stopping point. Both of these patterns, researchers suggest, tend to deepen and prolong the discomfort of uncertainty, rather than easing it, drawing a person further into unresolved unease, rather than gently toward clarity or rest. This growing area of research remains, in many ways, still developing. Scientists continue to debate the most precise way to measure something as complex and internal as intolerance of uncertainty. This ongoing debate is not a sign of weakness within the research itself. Quite the opposite. It reflects, instead, just how significant and multifaceted this concept has become, worthy of continued refinement, continued careful attention, precisely because it touches so many different corners of human psychological experience. Alongside this refinement and measurement, researchers have also turned attention toward a particularly hopeful area of inquiry, the question of treatment. Some research suggests that therapeutic approaches directly targeting intolerance of uncertainty itself, rather than addressing only its surface-level symptoms, may prove especially effective. This makes a certain intuitive sense, given everything explored throughout this journey. If discomfort with uncertainty functions as something close to a root mechanism, quietly influencing such a wide range of emotional difficulties, then addressing that root directly, rather than only managing its downstream effects, may offer a more meaningful, more lasting path toward relief. In practice, many therapeutic approaches designed around this understanding tend to follow a similar underlying principle: gradual, gentle exposure. Rather than asking a person to eliminate uncertainty from their life entirely, an impossible task under any circumstances, these approaches instead help a person face uncertain situations gradually, in small, manageable steps, slowly building a greater capacity to tolerate ambiguity without becoming overwhelmed by it. This gradual approach reflects something we've touched on at various points throughout this exploration. The fear itself can genuinely be reduced, not by eliminating uncertainty, but by changing a person's relationship to it. Coping strategies such as reframing, learning to view an uncertain situation through a slightly different, less threatening lens, or gradual exposure, slowly building tolerance through repeated, manageable encounters with ambiguity, have both shown meaningful promise in helping ease this particular discomfort over time. And this leads towards something quietly important, worth holding on to carefully as this long journey draws toward its close. Learning to tolerate uncertainty, even imperfectly, even gradually, tends to reduce overall distress, and tends to improve a person's broader capacity to cope, not only with uncertainty itself, but with the wider range of life's difficulties more generally. This capacity is not something a person either has or lacks permanently. It can be built, slowly, deliberately, much like any other skill, through consistent, gentle practice over time. This points toward one of the more genuinely hopeful threads running through everything we've explored tonight. People can become more comfortable with uncertainty over time. This fear, however deeply rooted, however shaped by biology, history, and culture, remains fundamentally manageable rather than fixed. It is not a permanent, unchangeable feature of who a person is, carved in stone, resistant to any further growth. It is a pattern, capable, like most patterns, of gradually softening with understanding, patience, and gentle, repeated practice. This capacity for change feels particularly relevant now, within the specific conditions of modern life. Modern life, in many ways, tends to intensify this old, ancient fear, rather than ease it. People today are exposed to a nearly constant stream of uncertainty and rapid change, more information, more possibility, more unresolved questions arriving more quickly and more continuously than at almost any other point in human history. News arrives instantly, from every corner of the world, often before any clear resolution has been reached. Change unfolds rapidly, across technology, work, relationships, and daily life, often faster than any person can fully process or adjust to. This near-constant exposure to unresolved ambiguity places real, ongoing demand on a psychological system that, as we explored earlier tonight, originally evolved within a considerably slower, considerably more predictable world. Given this modern intensity, understanding how this fear actually works becomes more valuable than ever. Understanding why the brain responds to uncertainty the way it does offers something genuinely useful, the chance to respond with awareness, rather than simply reacting on pure instinct alone. This distinction matters a great deal. Instinctive reaction happens automatically, quickly, often without conscious input, driven by ancient circuitry built for a very different world. Awareness, by contrast, offers a moment of pause, a small space between stimulus and response, within which a person can choose, even gently, even imperfectly, how they might want to meet an uncertain moment, rather than simply being swept along by old, automatic patterns alone. And so we arrive, finally, at the closing reflection of this long, unfolding journey. The unknown, in all its many forms, may never fully disappear. This is simply the nature of being alive, moving forward through time, toward a future that remains, by its very definition, not yet known. No amount of understanding, no amount of practice, no amount of gentle awareness will ever fully eliminate uncertainty from human experience. That was never truly the goal. What can change, gradually and genuinely, is a person's relationship with that uncertainty. Learning how the mind reacts to the unknown, understanding the old evolutionary roots of this fear, the fast, protective reflexes of the amygdala, the body's ancient stress response, the mind's habit of filling empty space with worry, the deep influence of memory, upbringing, and culture, all of this understanding offers something quietly powerful. It offers the possibility of no longer being entirely controlled by this fear, even while continuing to feel it, even while continuing to live, as every person always has, inside a future that remains genuinely unknown. This has been a long journey tonight, moving slowly through 100 small windows into a single, deeply human experience. From the earliest recognition that this fear is common, not weak, through the ancient survival logic that shaped it, into the intricate workings of brain and body, through the quiet influence of memory and culture, and finally, toward this gentler understanding, that uncertainty, however uncomfortable, can be met with growing steadiness rather than lasting distress. If you have stayed with this journey until its very end, whether fully awake or drifting somewhere closer to sleep, know that the understanding gathered here does not require anything further from you right now. It simply rests, quietly, ready to be carried forward, gently, into whatever unknown still lies ahead. Rest now, if rest is what you need. The unknown will still be there tomorrow, as it always has been. And so, a little more steadily now, will you?